Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Have attention, please. All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead and take out your notes. We're going to continue with the events leading up to genocide. And we'll either start today or tomorrow. Hotel Rwanda, PG-13. I think, having given you guys enough advance notice and so forth, you'll be okay. Okay? Julian, I think you're going to be okay. All right? So, yeah, and I think we'll be able to have that. And so we'll watch that in the midst of it because I think it adds a lot of context. And they do a decent job of it. It's fairly accurate. It is. It's very dramatic, and you get a real sense because of how it's put together of kind of like being in the place and time in the midst of this Rwandan genocide. No. It's color. Okay? Yeah. Oh, please be careful. Yes, please be careful. Yeah, not like my 10th grader was like, oh, yeah, Japanese Americans put in confinement. Yeah, those little girls look like grenade throwers. What? No, you silly child. What? No, because remember, like, Minidoka, Idaho, we have Japanese Americans, like, I always show a picture of, like, Japanese schoolgirls, Japanese American schoolgirls. What? I don't know that one. You'll have to send me a link to it. I have no idea what you're talking about, other than those are two colors, black and yellow. Okay, Mary, I'm in the dark. Enlighten me. Send me a link to it, and then I'll answer your question. I don't even know who this is by either. Okay, are you guys ready? Oh, my gosh. I thought you guys are like full of like political correctness and you're like super, super sensitive. You're the generation that's going to get it right. All right. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's the millennials, right? Those are the ones older than you. Yeah, they've got it all right, and you have to look up to them because they're older. Yeah, right. All right, here we go. Last we left off. Shh. The Civil War is not going very well for the government under President Habi. Okay, I can never get his full name pronounced correctly, but I do believe it is Habyarimana. Okay, he has been the president since 1973 when he had the military coup takeover, establishing the Second Republic. He was the Army Chief of Staff, and Jackson is leading the Civil War effort from bases located just inside of Uganda.
Oh, well, he's a part of the RPF.
I'm appalled that you can't think of his name.
Hey, I gotta find it.
I am appalled that you can't find...
Paul Kagame.
Exactly, Paul Kagame. And how is the RPF doing in the Civil War?
They're pretty good.
Yep, they're doing quite well. This is always kind of interesting because you look at it, it's like the population of Rwanda itself, about 90% Hutu, 10% thereabouts Tutsi, and yet this Tutsi force is very effective. Where last we saw they were within 20 kilometers. How many miles is that? 14 miles of Kigali, the capital city. And you're wondering, where's Kigali? Look on the back of your paper that I gave you. It's like right in the center. So the RPF is doing quite well in this. And so the president is like, I don't know what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to like work with these guys or come up with some kind of a deal. All right? Ashton, who is the CDR, the Coalition for the Defense of the Republic? Besides being Hutu, do they support the president or do they say, President? I'll ask it another way. Is the CDR Hutu extremists or more moderate Hutus? Other way. Yeah, they're going to be the extremists. And they're always putting pressure on the president not to compromise, not to back down. Stick to the hard line. Stick to the message that you can hear on RTLM radio. Stick to the message that you can read in Kangura magazine. Okay? Stick to the Hutu is best, Hutu power. Stick to the message that young people are joining up and getting training on how to set up roadblocks, use weapons, including machetes, because they're cheaper, and you can buy them in mass from China. That's the message. And yet, here we go. You write this down? Okay? In August of 1993, looking at the reality of the situation going on in the Civil War, the president of Rwanda goes to Arusha, Tanzania. Do you know where's Tanzania? If you get on an airplane and you're flying from Kigali, which direction do you fly if you're going to Tanzania? You go east. It's the country just over to the east. Yep, they're very good. Okay? In Arusha, Tanzania, organized by the OAU, the Organization of African Unity, so it's like a kind of like a mini UN for African states, because they're looking at the fighting going on in Rwanda, and they're like, we need to like get some negotiation to stop this fighting. Okay, so the RPF goes there, the president goes there, and they reach an agreement. It's called the Arusha Peace Agreement, or the Arusha Accords. And I've got them listed up here, and I will give you some details here. Okay? This is going to be reached in August of 1993. Now notice, we're getting closer to the beginning of the genocidal events, which are going to start in April of 1994. So the countdown. Okay? What? The Arusha Accords? Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. You see it? Yeah, second line from the bottom, Arusha, Tanzania, Arusha Peace Agreement. Okay, very good. Here is the key components. First, a ceasefire. Okay, so both the sides are going to stop fighting. A ceasefire. And actually, who's giving away more? Shh, Jackson, please. Who's giving away more in agreeing to a ceasefire? Who's doing better at that stage of the fight? RPF, the Tutsi, Paul Kagame. So they agreed to a ceasefire. These are other components, and some of them are going to take a while. This is an important part. Some of these components are going to take a while, and there will be an expectation, particularly on the RPF, that these agreements are going to be carried out. Watch this. First, besides the ceasefire, the presidential powers are going to be reduced somewhat. Okay? All right, fine. Rule of law will be established. You writing that down? Rule of law, which basically means like you're not just going to have some arbitrary tribunal come along and go, I want to take your stuff and kill you. Rule of law. I mean, if the government wants to put you in confinement, they have to prove that you've done something wrong. Okay, does that make sense? Here is a very important component. A transitional government with power sharing with Hutus and Tutsis. Okay, that's going to be a very important component. Another component, bless you, I think, resettle Tutsi refugees back in Rwanda. And some of those guys have been refugees, for like 20, 30 odd years. Okay? Resettle refugees back into Rwanda. Okay? Tutsi ones. Yeah, like the ones that are in Uganda predominantly. Okay? Next one. Yes?
What was the second one you said after the president's powers are limited?
Establish rule of law. Justice. I mean, that's establish justice. Thank you. Okay, enough with the preamble to the Constitution. All right. Next one. The RPF is going to be allowed to participate and be members in the military with 50% of the officer positions Tutsi, held by Tutsis. Do you understand that? So the military, which is a key component, obviously, in Rwandan politics and anything else, the Tutsis are going to play a key role in that military. Okay? That's a big one. Okay? 50% of officers. I think probably they're anticipating that a lot of the rank and file soldiers are going to be still predominantly Hutu, just because of the population. But the officer ranks 50% Tutsi. Okay? And if you're a former RPF, you can be part of that army. Got that? Okay? A national assembly, fine. Elections within 2 years. National elections within 2 years. It's like a Congress. Yeah. So a legislative branch. and to help transition and oversee everything, a United Nations force. All right, let's go ahead and introduce the beginning of a United Nations force. Here we go. It will be created at the same time as the Arusha Peace Agreement, August of 1993. The United Nations is going to try and help do its bit to help make sure things are going to be able to be carried out. We will see exactly how much the UN actually does. Pathetically little. Okay, which is going to be very sad, actually. It's not like worth laughing about, because one of the guy who's going to be in charge of it, of this United Nations mission for Rwanda, and of course if it's a UN thing it has to have an acronym, UNAMIR. Okay? It's going to be headed by a Canadian, and the Canadian general is Romeo Dallaire. He's a Canadian brigadier general, and he is going to be in charge of that UN force to monitor the ceasefire and provide security during the transition. So we're going to see the United Nations attempting to play a role in that. I think it's fascinating because Dallaire, the first quote you actually see from him is well after the genocidal events take place, and he is going to be severely emotionally impacted having to observe all of that taking place and not have the wherewithal, the means to actually prevent it from taking place. It's a very, very frustrating position for him. It is a very, very scary thing, because he's like, I believe the devil exists because some of these guys are going to be carrying out the genocide and so forth. He had to actually deal with them in order to try and lessen the impact. When we watch the movie, Nick Nolte, the American actor Nick Nolte, is going to be playing like General Dallaire. And he's going to be very, very frustrated as the movie goes on. The light blue cap is what you will associate with United Nations forces. Now, United Nations forces, go ahead and write this down. Countries voluntarily agree to participate and send in forces. So, for example, we'll see some sent in to participate with the UN force from different African nations. Ghana is going to be one that will send some forces to participate. Belgium will also be another country that will send some forces to participate. But it's a voluntary thing. And I can tell you right now, there's not going to be nearly enough. And General Dallaire is going to ask for more, and he's not going to get the ones that he knows he needs to have. And it's going to be quite apparent. Kind of like the security forces at the Capitol on January the 6th. Not enough for the task at hand. These guys are going to be completely overwhelmed when things get really, really ugly. Okay? So let's move the clock forward. April 1994. In April 1994, things had really been falling apart. Hutu extremists are upset with the Arusha Accords. They don't like the Arusha Accords. They think that the president has betrayed them, and they're looking around and they're planning. Oh yeah, they're planning for something. And when will they actually carry it out? Well, they're going to carry it out in April of 1994. Pause for a moment there. As we look back on this question of how much does the outside world, and particularly that part of it that has the military capability of actually intervening and doing something serious, Western countries, the United States, Europe, how much will they really commit to an ugly, ugly, dangerous, bloody fight in Africa to try and protect Africans? Well, not much. And this is where history is kind of like, wow, if you had a bad day yesterday, that might impact you, and you're thinking of how things are going to be today. Well, the United States had a really bad day in 1992 and 1993. Let's pause for a moment on what we will refer to as the Somalia situation, or the shadow of Somalia. Okay? And this is going to impact some decisions by the United States and other countries, as in, should we actually do something to help out Africans who are suffering? Yep. Why the U.S. and why later when I say Dallaire says that we were promised 8,000, even though we need more than that. But you know how many actually got? Go ahead and write this down. They were actually given 2,500. They were promised 8,000 troops. They got 2,500. Oh, and the terms of use for the troops is like, you have weapons, but clearly, if somebody has a weapon and they're under orders not to ever use that weapon in a particular situation, you find out pretty quick that that weapon is just like nothing. You might as well be wearing like, a tie. So, let me tell you what happened in Somalia. Let's back it up here a little bit. Somalia, not too far, here we go, in Africa and so forth, not too far away from there. In Somalia, after the end of the Cold War, remember the Cold War, right, where the Somalians were like, oh, we don't like the Ethiopians, and da-da-da, and then they switched sides, and then the Cold War's over, and after the Cold War's over, the United States and a lot of countries are like, whatever, Afghanistan, oh, is there something going on in Afghanistan? Doesn't bother me. Nicaragua? Doesn't bother me anymore. Somalia, wow, things are really falling apart there. Write it down. By 1992 in Somalia, it was anarchy.
It was anarchy.
There were warlords going on this way and right and center, and it's like people were starving. People were starving in Somalia. What's that? Okay, well, let's put it this way. There's no strong central government, okay? And if somebody is looking and going, wow, those people are starving over there because the warlords are really preventing those people from actually having access to, like, food, President George H.W. Bush steps in. Write this down. Okay? President Bush sends in, this is in the last year of his presidency, he sends in American troops to help with what on the face of it is clearly a humanitarian mission. To make sure that food and aid can get from the airport or the port facilities where it's brought in, can get out to where the people need it, in spite of warlords that are trying to maintain control over things so that you kind of catch my drift here. There's no strong national government to deal with. You've got various different warlords, and President Bush is like, I see poor people starving, and I want to do something about it. Well, good for you, President Bush. Good for you. Will President Clinton continue that policy going into 1993? Yes, he does. Yeah, he's like, I want to be a good guy too, and I want to help these people because otherwise they're starving, and I can do something about it because I've got U.S. military force, and they can make sure that the trucks get out to those people. But of course, here's the problem. The warlords don't like that because they've got their own agenda. And in June 1993, some Pakistani UN forces, right, they sent in Pakistani UN forces because Pakistan is a Muslim country, Somalia is predominantly a Muslim country, so they go in there and they're trying to help out too as part of the effort, and 23 of them are killed by mobs incited by a particular warlord, Muhammad Aidid. He is one of the warlords in Somalia. He's one of the significant ones. He operates in and out of the city of Mogadishu, which under normal circumstances would be a capital city. Okay, so we got Pakistani forces, UN forces getting killed, and that's in June of 1993. Quick question, yes?
You said, so the 23 that were killed were the Afghan UN members?
Pakistani. Yeah, they were ones that were sent over, contributed into that UN effort in Somalia
Were they the only ones that were killed? Or were
at that particular situation. Okay?
some Muhammad guy, Muhammad?
Yeah, Muhammad Aidid. Okay? So President Clinton looks, yes? Called what? I could be. Yeah, they got warlords in Somalia and so forth. So here's what President Clinton says. That's not going to stand. We're not going to let those guys get away with it. So write this down. October 1993, President Clinton authorizes some of our really top crack troops, U.S. Rangers. What part of the military are U.S. Rangers part of?
Army.
Army. Okay, so they're like, for the Navy, you have the SEALs. For the Army, you have Rangers. Yeah, so if you're in the Army and you want to be in like an elite group, you got to train really hard for and be admitted into the Rangers. Go ahead.
What about the Green Berets? Aren't they also part of the Army?
Green Berets, were they? They could have. That's more of like, I don't know if they still.
I don't know.
Are they still a unit? I know that they were operating during the Vietnam War. I always thought they were Marines, but I might be wrong about that. Anyway, Army Rangers going in. Here's the mission. They're going to fly into Mogadishu. Okay? They're going to move in, and they're going to take out ID'd. Got it? That's the goal. But it's a little bit of a problem, because Mogadishu's got a lot of people, and a lot of those people are friends of ID'd, and a lot of those people have weapons. And the Army Rangers come in Black Hawk helicopters. And one of the Black Hawk helicopters is taken down, and then another. And then the Army, from its base, has to actually figure out a way to actually go into the city to relieve the ones who have been hit. It's a mess. At the end of that episode in October of 1993, you'll have 18 U.S. military personnel dead. Army Rangers. The Somali crowd in Mogadishu taking the Army Rangers' dead bodies, dragging them around. I think there was one other that ultimately was traded for freedom. 18 U.S. dead. Imagine how many Somalis are going to be dead in that area around where the fighting is taking place. Because the U.S. military has got some serious weaponry. Hundreds of Somalis. It's crazy. It's bloody. It's horrible. And for what? To try and take out a warlord who was stopping food from being delivered? Write this down. They actually refer to it as the Somali syndrome. Not to be confused with the Vietnam syndrome, which is actually, no, go ahead. You can, there's similarities. The Vietnam syndrome, let's not get into another war, because that could be a real big problem, like in Vietnam. Attitude in America is like, really? How many areas of the world have got bad people in it, and we're going to like put our American lives on the line to protect those bad people, to protect nice people because there's bad people? And, is there a national security issue? So American public opinion quickly turned away from the kind of commitments that might actually help people survive in bad times. Yeah. In that particular area, yeah. Because he was seen as being the one behind killing the Pakistani UN folks who were trying to get food out to other areas that Muhammad Aidid was not popular with, so that they would not starve to death. Because we know this in war. Is starvation an effective tool to get rid of your enemy? Yeah, it is. I mean, it goes back to ancient times. Hey, those guys in that city right there, surrender or starve to death, because we're going to lay siege to you. Of course, you have to make sure you bring enough food yourself, because if you don't have enough food, then you might be the one starving and ultimately having to leave. So starvation tactics are a common thing that occurs in wartime. Is the United States willing to commit to that? Well, as I said, United Nations, UNAMIR, they only ultimately provide 2,500 UN forces. Yeah, question?
So the Somalia syndrome was basically like the U.S. kind of like backed off from intervening that weren't happening.
Yeah. So, and here's the thing. When we get to the genocide taking place in Rwanda, the United States, among other countries, had committed to intervene in cases where there was a genocide taking place. We signed off on that. When the genocide starts taking place in Rwanda, the Clinton administration is going to look and go, we don't really want to call it genocide, because if we call it genocide, then we're going to have to actually do something about it. So there's sort of like this mealy mouth, sort of like there's acts of genocide and so forth. But I mean, you can be critical of Clinton. And later he'll be like, I'm sorry. And he will actually go to Rwanda and apologize and so forth. But I mean, the deed's already been done, or the lack of intervention's already been done. A lot of other countries are going to look and go, wow, there's people being killed. That really sucks. Wow. Are we willing to get into the mix and put our guys' lives on the line in order to protect a bunch of Africans in a minority situation from being killed by other Africans who want them dead? Meanwhile, In Burundi, write this down, so we got all these different little events taking place to just sort of like add interesting components to how this is all going to play out. In October 1993, in Burundi, a president, and at that time it's a Hutu president, they've got a Hutu in there, is assassinated by some of his soldiers, who happen to be, have you figured it out? Tutsis, exactly. Yeah. So that's in October of 1993. By the next year, January, Dallier is getting, let's get the real picture here, Dallier is getting intelligence from a source, a credible source, from within the government called Jean-Pierre. And it basically says, you know what? They're planning to carry out a massacre. What kind of intelligence is he getting? Well, with the help of French loans, Hutu extremists are buying masses and masses amounts of cheap, mass-produced machetes and distributing them amongst the Hutu population, amongst the Interahamwe and others. Oh, and by the way, when we get the killing taking place, 60% of those that end up dead are going to be macheted to death. Not bullets, machetes. You got that? So this is what Dallier is. He's getting this intelligence, and he's like, I need more support now. Will he get it? No. And Hobby is like, the president is like, I got to carry out these Arusha peace accords, but man, I'm getting a lot of pushback from like Hutus who are like, don't do this, you traitor. Finally, he agrees. In April of 1994, April 6th of 1994, here we go. April 6th of 1994, President Hobby gets on his airplane and flies to Arusha in Tanzania for follow-up talks. Another regional summit, obviously, what was this, like within a year after the Arusha peace accords had been agreed. He meets with representatives of other countries and, of course, the RPF, and he confirms, write this down, he confirms that he's going to carry out his end of the bargain. He's going to carry out the Arusha Accord, right? What other leaders were with him? Well, at that time, I'm going to mess the name up here, Cyprien Ntaryamira, this guy right here, the president for Burundi. So the new president for Burundi, he's like, sure, I'll take a lift back in your airplane because, I mean, that's a little bit of a drive from Arusha, which is sort of in the northeast part of Tanzania, all the way back to Burundi. And African roads are not necessarily the easiest, most comfortable things to be riding on. So he takes an airplane lift. Yes? Yep, that guy. So you see that at the top there? Yes, Burundi President Cyprien Ntaryamira. Okay? So they're flying back into Kigali, set to land and inform the population. Actually, people already knew what he had agreed to. And as his plane is approaching Kigali, it's shot down. Hit by 2 surface-to-air missiles, SAMs. 12 dead. Pretty much everybody on the plane. Pilot, crew, 2 presidents, dead. Interesting question. Who did it? The leader of Rwanda and the leader of Burundi, who probably should not have taken that lift. Okay? They were both in the airplane. They were both shot down. Sorry. So let's make it clear. These 2 leaders are shot down. Who was the primary target? I think it's pretty clear it was the president of Rwanda. It's his plane. He's flying into his country and so forth. And then I suppose maybe he was going to tell the pilot, oh, go ahead, do an extra trip, drop me off here, and drop this guy off at Burundi. Thank you very much, have a good time, and so forth. Who did it? Write this down. Immediately, Hutu Power, the radio, gets on the news and says, RPF killed our president. RPF's like, excuse me? We didn't do it. It's your Hutu extremists that did it. They killed their own president because they didn't like the fact that he was negotiating with the RPF, the Tutsis. Yeah, exactly. Eventually, after it's all over, there will be forensic evidence and investigations and so forth, and it will point out that the missiles had been fired from an area controlled by the presidential security forces. So it was his own guard. I think the evidence seems to suggest that Hutus within the president's group had seen him as being somebody that they wanted to have gone. Supposedly also with the help of 3 whites, perhaps they were French, I don't know. The president is dead. And isn't that convenient? Because immediately something goes into play. Wow, we're ready for it. Here we go. Yeah, course and intervention. Here we go. The genocide begins. The course of conflict and interventions. The president's dead. The genocide begins. The killing begins immediately. Within hours of the death of the president, which history seems to suggest perhaps was pre-planned, because he gets shot down out of the sky after having come over from having agreed that it's going to continue with their Arusha Accords. And you're going to have, up to maybe perhaps in a little bit of an excess of 1 million people dead within the space of 100 days. Almost all of those people who were killed within 100 days are Tutsi. There will be moderate Hutus also killed. Anybody who's a Hutu that's going to be trying to protect a Tutsi will be killed. More people killed in a space of time than Hitler was able to even carry out with his mechanistic, holocaustic efforts. The United Nations tries to, the presidential guard, the soldiers go around, they identify opposition leaders, moderate Hutus, Tutsi opponents, kill them. So the military's in on it right away, okay? This is like, execute this plan, and they do. Question? No. Good question. Let's clarify this. The agreement was to have the Tutsis be half of those officer positions. That agreement hadn't been fulfilled by that point. It's a good point. Okay? I mean, the president, the previous year, says this is the way it's going to be. Well, was it the way it was supposed to be by the time that the massacres occurred? No. So the Hutus are still very much comprising, like, I would say, like the entirety of the Rwandan military. And the Rwandan military is going to be playing an active role carrying out the genocidal attacks, as well as the Interahamwe, as well as neighbors. Because sometimes if the killing takes place in your neighborhood, local Interahamwe, the military are going to come up to you and go, you kill this person. The number of people that are going to be involved in killing other people during this time period is astounding. Some of them actually forced to do it, because otherwise if you don't do it under orders from the Interahamwe or the military, you might as well get killed yourself.
So, what was the population of Tutsis and Hutus like overall? Because a million is a lot.
I think I gave you a number as far as like, remember when we talked about the population going up to what, about 8 million, wasn't that right? By 1994. Yeah, so killing, what is that, about 10 to 15% of the population in the course of 100 days? 8 million people altogether in Rwanda by 1994. 8 million people were living there. And 1 million of them are going to end up dead. Most of them Tutsi. There's a lot of Tutsis. Yeah, it's about 1/8, yeah. Okay? All right. There was, who shot it down? Yeah, there's the plane. What's left of it. Here's another thing, yeah. 91% Tutsis dead, approximately 1 million. This one shows 1,174,000 Tutsis. Politically moderate Hutus died over a period of about 100 days. Machete attack. This guy survived. He's got slices all over his face. piles and piles and piles of people. Oh, it's going to be a problem. Oh, yeah, here we go. Let's just focus on this one as I tell the story. Here we go. Prime Minister, a moderate Hutu. Her name is Agata. Anyway, I can't pronounce the last name there. It starts with a U. Do you see it in the handout? Rwanda. Okay? So she's not the president. She's a prime minister. So, you know, some of those countries you get a variety of different shared powers and so forth. So an important political leader within the government, the prime minister, identified as a moderate. And the UN, Dallier is like, she's in danger. So he sends over 15 UN peacekeepers to protect the prime minister, her husband, and the children. She's a Hutu moderate. She's a Hutu moderate. Which means what? They don't want to kill Tutsis. Yeah, politically moderate. Yeah. So she's not an extremist. She doesn't go. I mean, it's, yeah. She's. On the other side. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Whatever you want to call them. However you want to identify them. The United Nations is like, we need to protect them. So they send over 15 UN peacekeepers. Write it down. 5 from Ghana and 10 from Belgium. They're quickly surrounded by military forces that are trying to get her dead. Okay? Their objectives, their rules of engagement, and you'll see this in the film, their rules of engagement is not to fire on anybody. So what happens? They're overcome. The 5 Ghanaian UN troops are disarmed and told to leave. The 10 Belgian UN forces that tried to protect the prime minister are disarmed, tortured, castrated, and killed. The prime minister and her husband are killed. The children manage to hide and escape. Belgium. So they're part of the Belgian military that was assigned to be part of that UN protective force. Their specific job on that day was to protect the prime minister. They weren't able to do it. They cut, yeah. Sorry. Mary's like, I learned something in school today. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it's almost like, you know, the Rwandan military and so forth, and then Interahamwe, they look and they're like, you guys aren't willing to fight us. You don't have enough troops in there and so forth. We are not. We are, enough. Ixnay on the, we're not going to, we don't see you as a serious threat. Now now this is an interesting thing because this guy's in handcuffs. On April 7th, 1994, he was not in handcuffs. This man right here, Bagasara, is the chief of staff for the Ministry of Defense. There is a bit of a power struggle among the leading Hutu in the military and government and so forth, and he's going to end up at the top of the heap. So this guy is going to take a lot of blame and responsibility for what took place during the time of the genocide. Got that? Chief of staff for the Ministry of Defense, Colonel Tanesti Bagasara. Meanwhile, on the radio, ooh, the radio. Ooh, it's just frightening. When you hear the radio and you're trying to change the dial, old-fashioned thing, you just change the dial and you hear. If you were listening to RTLM radio that night, cut the 12th's down. Identifying to the Hutus, to the Interahamwe, to whoever is listening. Get out your weapons. We've been planning for this all along. Go into this neighborhood, find this person, find them, kill them. Who's involved in this? The official military. All of the news media sources, the radio and sources, the Interahamwe and others. They're carrying it out. There is no safe place. Is there a safe place? Write this down. We'll actually explore this quite a bit later on. There's going to be a bunch of people who will like, I'm going to go to church. Sanctuary. And in fact, actually, a whole bunch of them go to the churches, and even the Rwandan government will be like, yeah, go to the churches. It'll make it so much easier to sweep up all the dead, dry leaves. Massive massacres killed out at religious sites. How about a foreign-run hotel? The Hotel de Micheline, run by the Belgians, Sabina. It's a Belgian corporation. They also run airplanes and they run hotels. It's in Kigali. Paul Rusesabagina is the assistant to the head of the hotel. He is African, played by Don Cheadle in the movie Hotel Rwanda. Here he is right here, talking to the actor Don Cheadle. You're going to hear the story of how Paul Rusesabagina is going to do everything he possibly can in order to provide for security for the people inside the hotel. Does he have a military? No. He's going to have to sweet talk his way through everything. Oh my gosh, it's going to be crazy. Yeah. You weren't safe in your neighborhood. You weren't safe on the street. Maybe they thought that there would be like sanctuary given to people in the churches. It was not a well-founded plan ultimately. In fact, some of the worst massacres are going to be carried out at religious locations. And we're going to get to all of that. We're going to get to all of that. This is going to be, we are like halfway through here. But this is that point to pause. Are you ready? We're going to start the film. Oh, we have 2 minutes left? We don't have like 3 minutes left? Yeah, this is what happened. I'll just show you this, and we'll get the official details. This is what it looked like in one church in Kigali. Oh, I got more pictures now. Yeah, some of the pictures is like, oh my God. Horrible, 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 horrible. We'll start it off fresh next time, shall we? Yeah. Brace yourself. Yeah, everyone come in, because we're going to show that. And I don't know, I feel bad that we're not going to see it all the way through. But, we didn't actually finish Schindler's List. So, unlike last year when you didn't come back after spring break. Oh, no, wait, next week. We'll have it done by next week. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking we were going to start spring break. No, we'll start it tomorrow, and then we'll finish it out early next week. Okay? Oh my gosh, you guys are horrible. Jackson, Garrett, should know better. Okay, thank you.